My name is Steve Appel. You're dialed into WorkComp Matters. We've got the president and CEO of WorkComp Central, Kristen Chavez.
Stand by SOT1.
Standing.
10 seconds. Ready, rolling. Ready, SOT1.
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll in.
From the round table at Legendary Uncle Studios, welcome to another edition of WorkComp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about WorkComp Matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your WorkComp Matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You can send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. You can be old school. Send a fax, 818-475-1437. With me in studio, my right-hand man, the Chief of Staff, Dr. Michael Zyma, my protege, Attorney Robert Ozeron. Scott Walton of Uncle Studio is on the board taking care of the technical difficulties. Back in Munich, Germany, is John Scalia. And at the round table, President and CEO of WorkComp Central, Ms. Kristen Chavez, making sure the whole damn thing goes right.
Well, trying to.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. What can I tell you? We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and of course, ABC Rugs. For those of you who don't know, and I've said it about 101 times, about 2 years ago, I had a handshake agreement with WorkComp Central to do 52 audio podcasts in 52 weeks. I think we did 51. We missed one. WorkComp Central was kind enough to renew the contract for a second year. This is our almost the completion of our second year, our 50th or 51st show this year. So in the tank, this is going to be about 101 and 102. And tonight, next week's show, of course, is going to be the wrap-up show, Say Goodbye to 2018, where we cover all of the stories and the guys get to say everything about that. But what I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate the last guest than have the president and chief executive officer of WorkComp Central, Ms. Kristen Chavez, on the show. And I want to say thank you very much for coming in. What do you think of Legendary Uncle Studio? A great place to just stretch out and relax and hopefully have a good time, get some excellent information in a fun, positive way.
I think it's great. Yeah.
That is fantastic. So I got a whole slew of questions that I want to ask you, and we briefly went over them before the show started. But normally I do my research and I give a long-winded introduction, but you've kind of been under the radar a little bit since prior to taking over WorkComp Central. I mean, pretty much all I was able to find was you worked there for 10 years, you took off, you then came back, and now you're the big cheese. And other than that, it was very difficult to find out stuff about you. So let's take it right from the start. How did you first come into contact with WorkComp Central? How did you decide to be working there? Was it an advertisement? Did you walk in? And tell me how that went.
Well, my mom was the office manager for David. So she did the bookkeeping, all the things that David needed done. And Dave was the writer at that time, as well as basically the marketer. There were about 3 employees, and he decided those calculators that we have on the website need the data input into them. So my mom contacted me and said, hey, David has about a month's worth of work. Do you want to do it? And I said, sure. I went into the office and started the data entry. Phone ring. Dave's like, well, you knew David. David.
I think I met him right about the same time you started, within about 6 months or a year. Yes.
And he said, pick up the phone, kid. I said, okay. And from there, just kind of, he's like, do you want a job? About a month after. And I said, sure. And then whatever David really dreamt up, I kind of helped him do. And that helped me know everything, the ins and outs of Work Comp Central. So he decided he wanted to offer education. I said, all right. And we went into that world. Same thing with advertising, edX, anything that he kind of needed, I helped build. And then from then on became his right-hand person.
Now, you just said something interesting. When you started, that Work Comp Central only had 3 employees.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like it was a lot more. And in fact, when we were talking about getting you on the show, you made it a point to tell me essentially, now, WorkComp Central is really a small business.
It is.
It's even though it seems like it's a nationwide corporation, which it might be. It's a small family business, and I presume you like it that way.
To an extent, yeah.
And to what extent do you like it being a small business?
That we have that family feel. We're not that corporate. A lot of people say we're not corporate, so you don't have that. You can still come in, go. You kind of know everybody. Everybody knows everybody's story and that type of thing. Where corporate, you start, having. When we were a little bit bigger, we were very siloed. So IT kind of just hung out with IT, and the account reps kind of hung out with them, and education hung out with them. Where now. We're in one building, so we're able to all be together, and everybody knows everybody's story. So.
It was bigger before?
In our old office, we were bigger, but we had 3 different suites because David just broke through walls and then he moved us to a building where we were all together, so we were very siloed. So
now, speaking of breaking through walls, I'm going to read you a Wikipedia definition. I think you know what's coming, but I'm going to do it anyways. Business term describing an information barrier within an organization that was erected to prevent exchanges or communication that could lead to conflicts of interest. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
Say it.
The news?
No, the Chinese wall.
Oh.
There's been essentially what I deemed a Chinese wall between Work Comp Matters and Work Comp Central ever since we started, and that was done by design, right? Can you talk a little bit?
Speak on that.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm barely getting introduced to you, because it was with Jacob and Leaf that this was going on, and maybe that's the Chinese wall that you're talking about, because that's why I had to get in contact with you to learn about the agreement, the handshake agreement, and all that type of stuff. So, yeah. So.
And that's the way that Work Comp Central set it up originally. And I said, fine, and I had asked them for ideas. Do you like the show? Would you like the show to go in a different direction? Do you want straight news? Do you want to help me bring in other guests? And they essentially said, Steve, do what you want. The thing is yours. Run with it. And of course, in addition to having you as the first guest, this is the first time we've ever, at least in my mind, we've pierced the Chinese wall. I mean, we had someone from Work Comp Central come in, and I'm very pleased. Now, don't get me wrong. Work Comp Central has treated me absolutely fantastic for the entire 2 years, but you always strive for improvement. You always want to cut like 5 or 10% of whatever is dragging you down, and then reevaluate every year. That's the way a proper leader should run a business. And that's a great segue to my next question.
All right.
What's it like being a leader versus being like an employee? I'm assuming that you never had your own business before getting the CEO, the ownership, right?
It's exhausting. You're a big problem solver. Everybody has a problem, where when you're kind of a leader, or when you're an employee, you just get handed, especially with David, he knew what his vision was, and I knew how to make it happen. So that was pretty easy, and I had what I need to, where now it's just a lot of talking. I've had 5 meetings today with different departments and trying to figure out what their next process was and all that type of thing. So it's also building them up where they can feel free enough to make the decisions and help the company go forward. So
David's main vision, of course, is comp laude, correct?
No.
No, I thought it was. I thought that's the main thing that Work Comp Central strives for is comp laude.
No, it's the
okay.
news. It's
okay.
to be the resource. So right now we're seen as a California legal resource tool. The biggest thing we're going to be changing is becoming the research tool for workers' compensation.
And can you talk about that?
Yeah. I want to, so like I said, we're the California legal research tool. I want to offer a suite of things for every state. So more for Florida, more for Texas, more for the states that are, we're not offering as much as we do. Like in California, we have the calculators, the codes, regulations, a lot of news stories, a full suite of things where Texas and Florida, we don't. I want to offer things for Nevada, go out to the different states and figure out what tools they need, as well as the different segments in those states.
I said on the show yesterday that I totally agree with you about expanding to other states, but does that take you a little bit away from the mom and pop shop field? Does that put you back more in a corporate atmosphere? How can you expand to all the different states and keep it the family business, so to speak?
I don't know.
I would, as a business owner myself and as a leader, I always fear about expanding too much. But on the other hand, I do my best to delegate to the people that I trust, and then have those meetings and have the trust. I mean, there's not enough time in the day to take care of every little nuance, so you have to trust people. Do you have people around you that you trust? I would assume yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's the only reason why I'm successful and was able to become president and CEO is because of my team and having the trust and having them there.
How did you arrange your team? When you first came back, it was July, right?
It was July.
I'm assuming that you came back with the idea that you were going to develop the team, and in the process of doing that, some people had to be added and some people had to be cut loose.
Well, it's been 18 months since I got so it was August of 2018 that I became president CEO. So it was 18 months. So that what my intention coming back was just making sure that David's vision and company stayed true to what he wanted. It wasn't really to become CEO and president. You know, I was very fortunate that is what they thought of me and was able to build up. But coming back in July of 2016 was just making sure that because I bleed Work Comp Central. Like everybody knows that when it comes to Work Comp Central, I will do anything and everything. So it was more to make sure that his vision continued on and that Work Comp Central continued on. So.
Do you accept criticism lightly from the people around you? Are the people around you afraid to say, Kristen, I know you want to do this, but this is not a good idea, and here's why I think we should go in a different direction? How receptive are you to criticism?
I think okay. I mean, I'm new in the CEO role, so I think they're learning what kind of leader I am. When I was director of ops, of course, because, I'm here to hear what's going on, the different things. But as CEO and president, I do notice people are a little bit more timid because at the end of the day, I'm the final decision. And I was just going to ask you that. Are you really the final decision, or do you have a board of directors that you need to get behind you and get their votes, or talk about that for a moment? It depends on... is it a huge contract? Is it something that's going to put the company in a financial situation that I do have to run past the board for hiring, firing, the direction of the company? I get to make those decisions. I am the final word on that.
Talk about your hiring and firing practices. I tend to ask every guest, what do you look for in hiring somebody?
The position that I'm looking for and the resume that they turned in. I feel like a lot of people nowadays are just looking for jobs, so they'll turn in a resume, and I'm like, yeah, you're trying to fit a square into a circle with that resume that you're turning in. So first of all, are they paying attention to the job description versus just needing a job? I've had a couple like IT people turn in for the receptionist job, and it's like, you're a way high level IT person, and I know you need a job, but the front receptionist, you can't even say receptionist anymore. It's office administrator.
Is that no longer politically correct?
It is not. So office administrator.
Mike was telling me earlier that the Chinese wall is no longer politically correct. I said, well, I'm not aware of it, but it's
2 strikes
there
so
you go.
far. So here we go. We're on for.
How do you separate your business from your personal life? I mean, you just essentially said you live, eat, breathe, work comp central, but I'm assuming during the first 10 years that you didn't because you were an employee. So how has your home life, or I should say personal life, been affected now that you are CEO?
It hasn't, because as hard as I'm working now, I worked before. My kids know Work Comp Central. They know David. They know The Office. I mean, my little guy, when he was little, would run around the office with David, and he'd be in there. My middle 2 knew David very well. They have his shirts that they wear because he was a big Hawaiian shirt wearer, so they have it. So my personal life is work comp. Like I said, I just live, breathe, and eat Work Comp Central.
Do you take it home with you? I would
do.
I would assume you have to.
I do. That's why I came running in here with this big bag of stuff, and my laptop is usually with me wherever I go.
Well, there you go. There you go. Why did you leave after the first 10 years?
I thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Realized I liked working and came back, and then David's thing. I mean, I was back to doing like some work for him because we lasted about 6 weeks away from each other, and then he was like, hey, I have a couple tasks, do you want to do them? They have questions for you. And I'm like, sure, I'll do some work here and there. And then they needed somebody to watch the phones a day, and I was able to do that. And so I brought the little guy in with me, and then so I thought I could be a stay-at-home mom, but I couldn't.
You kept in touch with him periodically while you were not employed by Work Comp Central.
Correct.
Okay.
On my leave of absence is what we call it.
And that is excellent information. My name is Steve Appel. You're dialed into WorkComp Matters. We've got the president and CEO of WorkComp Central, Kristen Chavez, here. And we've got news coming up in a little bit. We are going to be talking about the possible government shutdown, the possible LAUSD teachers strike, speaking about your kids, unmanned grocery delivery vehicles. Nevada is the first state in the union with a majority female state legislature. In addition to another week you've got left to enroll in Obamacare. The bald eagle is no longer an endangered species. E-cigarette use by minorities are in the news. The death of Evelyn Berezin, I think I spelled that, I think I pronounced that right, and building in California, high-rise in the fire zone. So we've got news and all of that good stuff coming up. But right now, he was a 45-year workers' compensation attorney, but now he's pretty much retired. He's hanging out in Munich, Germany, and also his autobiography, his book on Kindle is out, and he said he was going to send me a link, but I didn't get it. So we're going to go to a regular contributor to the show, Mr. John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the WorkComp International Report from Munich. I'm recording this a little later than usual because I just came back from a short trip to Berlin. Hopefully I've done it in time so that it gets on the weekly podcast. The first thing I wish to begin with is to wish everyone happy holidays. Regardless of which religious tradition you're in, the holidays are pretty much all about the same thing. They're all about family, love, and kindness. Hopefully you extend that to your immediate family and beyond. As I've learned as I've gotten older, one of the saddest things to ever have to say is, I wish I had said this to so-and-so after they're dead. So if they're alive, if the people you love and care about are alive, make sure that you tell them how you feel and what you want to say to them so that you don't have that regret. Okay, I just came back from Berlin. I was in Berlin for a few days and had a very enjoyable time. I went to Berlin for 2 reasons. One, because it's the capital of the country I live in, and I figured I should go see it. And 2, I had lunch appointments with 2 friends up there. The Berlin is honest about its history. Berlin, as you know, is the capital of Germany, and it was the capital of Nazi Germany. And the Germans don't try to hide that. There's a memorial to the Holocaust victims. There's a memorial to the Jewish victims of the Holocaust. There's a memorial to the Gypsies. And they're in prominent places in the federal complex where all the federal buildings are. Most of the federal buildings, because Germany has only been reunited for a relatively short time, are modern architecture, some of them done by world-famous people. The German Bundestag, or Assembly Congress Hall, is an extremely intriguing construct. It's wide open. It's a great tour. It's a glass dome. The tour, by the way, is free. And it emphasizes what the Germans wish to emphasize, which is the fact that Germany is a free, open society and a free, open state. And it's, in fact, an impressive structure. So it was impressive. It also reminded me that while Germans are extremely honest about their past, we could learn from that as Americans. I would love to see a memorial in Washington, D.C. about the Indian genocide. After all, the Europeans who came to America did, in fact, commit a genocide on the American Indians. There should be a monument to the woes of slavery. Yes, there's Martin Luther King, but that's long after. So it would, and I like D.C., by the way. D.C. is a fun town to be in. As a tourist town, I recommend it. I think it's a fun place to go to. But it would be nice if we could have the same level of honesty about American history. My lunches were both enjoyable. They were both interesting. The people I had lunch with were both interesting people, so we had interesting discussions. One was a classmate of mine from UCLA Law, who is currently an appellate judge in the state of California. And while my friend comes from a different religious tradition than I do, I think it's typical of what California is all about. It doesn't matter. My German friend is the young woman who taught me German when I first got here. She was doing that because she was taking a break from law school, and she's now a full-fledged lawyer in Germany, working for an American law firm. In fact, she's reviewing documents, and she could not tell me which law firm she worked for. It's part of her contract that she's not allowed to say who she's working for or what she's reviewing. So that was interesting. But that brings home the American connection to Germany. If you go to Germany, you will find a lot of goodwill towards Americans. One of the first places I went to in Berlin was the Checkpoint Charlie Museum. For those of you not familiar with the Cold War, Checkpoint Charlie was the border between the Soviet zone and the American zone. And the museum there is quite interesting. It has exhibits of the automobiles, for example, that people used to escape in, where they would change the configuration of the car to hide people in the cars, to get them out. There's a lot of residual goodwill towards America as a result of German unification and as a result of the fact that everybody in Germany knows that the only reason Germany is one country today is because of what America did for it. So that's always nice. I had a good time, and once again, I'll close by wishing everybody happy holidays. And that's the report from Berlin this week.
John, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We've got a musical break coming up, and then we've got Mike and Robert with the news after Glenn Laughlin and the Cherry Blue Storms.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far, far as the eye can see? Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. keep all your money in every brown bag. It's time to, what a thing to do. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people?
Wow, the Cherry Blue Storms and Glenn Laughlin, and that is awfully loud. Well, what can I say? He's my right-hand man. He keeps me in check and out of trouble, hopefully, at least 90% of the time. With the news, he's the Chief of Staff, Dr. Michael Zima.
Thank you, Steve. Lawmakers came closer today toward a temporary measure that would fund the government for a few more weeks, but deny President Donald Trump money for a border wall. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said he's pitching a bill that would fund the government through February 8th, 2019. We don't want to end this year the way we began it, with another government shutdown, McConnell said. 9 federal departments and several smaller agencies, a quarter of the government, will run out of dough and shut down at midnight this Friday, December 21st, unless Congress and the White House strike a deal to extend their funding and eliminate the $5 billion impasse President Donald Trump is demanding for the southern border wall.
33,000 Los Angeles teachers Wednesday announced they will strike January 10th, 2019 if an agreement can't be reached with the LAUSD. The LAUSD faces the possibility of its first teacher strike since 1989. The teachers' union is demanding the adoption of a 6% salary increase, with 3% retroactive to July 1st, 2017, and the other 3% retroactive to July 1st, 2018.
Facebook has said over and over that it doesn't sell users' data, but investigations have found that for years it has given access to that information, including private messages and friend lists, to other tech giants like Netflix and Spotify without telling users.
Neuro and grocery chain Kroger are teaming up to bring unmanned delivery services to customers. The company said this week that Neuro's unmanned vehicle, the R1, will be added to a fleet of autonomous Prius vehicles that have run self-driving grocery delivery service in Scottsdale, Arizona, with vehicle operators since August.
Nevada is the first state in the union to have more than 50% women on its state legislature. Clark County commissioners made 2 appointments to the Nevada Assembly this week that made history. Rochelle Wynn will represent Assembly District 10, and Beatrice Duran will represent Assembly District 11. With the addition of these 2 women, the Nevada legislature will be 50.8% female in 2019.
Covered California gave consumers another week of enrollment after a federal judge's ruling on the Affordable Care Act last week. Judge Reed O'Connor of the U.S. District Court in Texas declared the entire health reform law is unconstitutional because of the original mandate requiring individuals to have insurance.
Penny Marshall, the successful actress, director, and producer, died Monday from complications of diabetes. Marshall was the first female to direct movies grossing over $100 million. Folks, got to tell you, I think A League of Their Own is one of the best movies of all time. Steve, you and I had a brief discussion about this. I believe A League of Their Own perhaps presents the strongest female characters in any movie ever made. These women were ball players.
The bald eagle is no longer on the federal endangered species list, but they still are considered threatened. On its website, the Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC, says the birds have come back from the brink of extinction thanks to conservation efforts in the 1970s banning and prohibiting the killing of the magnificent bird. Higher population levels and successful reproduction mean the bald eagle is on a firmer footing today than it has been for nearly half a century.
U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams has declared e-cigarette use by minors to be an epidemic in the U.S. Juul, the majority e-cigarette player in this business, has become popular among young folks and says e-cigarettes are meant for adult smokers who want to switch.
U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams has declared the e-cigarette used by minors to be an epidemic. Oh, apologies, you just read this one, Mike. The inventor of the word processor and airline reservation system, Evelyn Berzin, died December 8th at the age of 93. She's probably one of the most important women in history that you've never heard of. After graduating from NYU in 1945 with a degree in physics, Berzin became interested in the computer industry, and in 1962, as an employee of the company Teleregister, she built the computerized booking system for United Airlines.
Roughly 1 in 10 buildings are in California's highest risk fire zones, according to an analysis of maps drawn by the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection.
Elon Musk, who famously decided to try to build an underground tunnel system when he got fed up with the LA traffic, unveiled the first mile of his tunnel in Hawthorne, California yesterday. Initially, there was supposed to be a system of electric pods that can move 16 people at a time. Instead, a Tesla was lowered into the tunnel. The company said the vehicles will be able to move up to 150 miles per hour, but the test was much slower.
A higher percentage of California marijuana products are passing strict safety tests, but the sudden closing of a lab that state authorities found wasn't correctly checking for pesticides has raised new questions about the system intended to protect the purity and potency of legal cannabis. California legalized marijuana at the start of this year, and mandatory testing began July 1.
Marijuana was the most commonly detected substance with the highest drug positivity rate of all drug classes across the majority of industry sectors, according to a study released Wednesday by Quest Diagnostics.
And I want to thank Mike and Robert very much for reading the news. Jared, this is probably a good time to get their microphones and turn around the videotape, because now, for the first time in Work Comp Matters history, we're going to have Ms. Kristen Chavez reading the news. And here we go. Go for it.
Workers' compensation has been a profitable line of business in recent years, unlike many other property casualty lines, but the profitability is threatened by rising medical costs, payrolls, and legal expenses, according to a report by AM Best Cost Inc.
Sure, why not?
Sure.
The California Department of Industrial Relations reported Tuesday that 376 Californians died on the job in 2017, the same number as in 2016.
The Division of Workers' Compensation has announced the increase of mileage rate for the medical and medical legal travel expenses by 3.5 cents to 58 cents per mile, effective January 1st, 2019.
And I think that pretty much just about does the news. Is that right, Mike?
There's one more story, number 14.
Number 14. Go ahead, Kristen.
Injuries to restaurant workers caused employees to miss an average of 30 days from work, according to a report released today by AM Trust Financial Services, Inc., a provider of workers' compensation insurance.
And there goes the news. Excellent job.
Thank
awesome.
You.
We're gonna take another musical break. This is a song by Susan Scheller, who's we've had on the show occasionally. And if you like folk rock, this is the way to go. So we'll be back after a folk rock song from Susan Scheller.
3.
Should've known it'd come to this. Sure would like to travel to that crazy place behind your eye. Let it all unravel. scorch my soul like the sun sinking in the sea. Oh, I got my sweet surrender. You can do no wrong with me. Holding on forever. You got to talk to me, baby, in your secret melody. Oh, send it home to me. You got to bring it on home to me, darling. Singing out like Sunday on a Memphis radio. Like fire in your veins, baby, you got my soul. You got a distribution nationwide. Keep my music safe inside. Turn it into gold. Turn it into gold. On Memphis radio. Oh, you gotta look that now. Baby, send it home to me. You got to bring it on home to me. When you're singing out like Sunday on a Memphis radio. Singing like Mavis. You let it out like muddy on a Memphis radio. Yeah.
Folk rock sounds of Susan Scheller on Work Comp Matters. My name is Steve Appel, and we're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, ABC Rugs, and of course, Work Comp Central, CEO, President Extraordinaire, top of the food chain, Ms. Kristen Chavez. Now, you folks on the radio, Jared, the IT guy, has requested that I intro the news one more time, so I'm going to do that right now. Scott, just keep rolling. It's no big deal. And now with the news of the day, he's my right-hand man. He keeps me in check and out of trouble, hopefully at least 90% of the time, with the first news story of the day, Dr. Michael Zyma. And, of course, for your radio audience, you know that we already did the news, and so that's just a little bit of the technical issues. And thank you, Jared, the IT guy. So,
Thanks, Jared.
You were kind enough when I asked you in pre-interview to talk about some of the news of the day and such like that, and I appreciate that. As you may know, as much as possible, we try and get news stories about the homeless, and there was not a homeless news story. We also talk about self-driving cars. We had autonomous cars, and we had a story on Donald Trump. We do our best to keep the news stories to workers' compensation, employment, labor, but more so state politics. So tell me about your connections, if any, with state legislators, and I don't need to know how much money you're donating or who they are, but you must have somebody or yourself that has contacts with state legislators. Am I right? Or PACs or something like that?
Not me specifically. David was very much in there, but our news department, people, they want us to report what's going on. So they don't have per se relationships. We don't make any donations. That's how we stay to be we're biased. No, unbiased, not biased.
Right. No. Right.
But
Do you ever instruct or critique your news staff that you don't like the way that story is leaning? It's either leaning too left or too right. Make it more center. Do you ever read the stories and say that sounds a little biased? It's not as objective as you would like?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim Sams, our senior editor, mostly controls that component of the house, and not controls. He is pretty good with the reporters. They know what the standards are and what it is to make sure that we do. I mean, no matter who you ask, we're leaning one way or another. So we just try to report the facts that are given to us.
How much responsibility does Jim have regarding the news as far as the layout of the news each day on the site?
He runs.
He runs it.
Yeah.
So you do not say, I want this story up front, that story in back. He makes that decision, right? Mm-hmm. And does he meet with you on a regular basis?
No. But not, just he's in a different location. And that's just also how we keep sales separate from the news and how we are to stay unbiased, and that there's nothing of saying anything goes one way or another.
What do you think of the gig economy as far as Uber, Lyft? I mean, it's going, and that's also goes with autonomous cars, because Uber and Lyft have made no secret that say they want humanoids out of their cars in 5 to 10 years, even sooner than that. They want self-driving cars. And I think we had a news, Mike, didn't we have a news story? Yeah, about Ralph's Kroger company in Arizona. Their self-driving cars are delivering groceries. They're getting ready to.
I think that it has its benefits. I mean, if you go to some of the conferences now, there's we just had a story about one of the vendors is implementing Lyft into their program so that the injured workers can get to their appointments to make sure that there's a cost. So, they're then able to pay for it. It's a more at your versus a taxi or a van. They hire Lyft to take the injured worker to their medical appointments. So, it has its benefits. And
if I were a claims examiner in this day and age right now, I would never authorize a self-driving car to take an injured worker anywhere.
Self-driving or Uber. So it's Lyft.
Uber.
It is a driver. It's not no, we're not that advanced yet. But on the Lyft and Uber side, they are using that more.
And I absolutely agree. Well, now for a first, because I'm pretty much out of questions, and since the big cheese is here, she's going to ask me some questions, or she's going to ask Mike and Robert some questions, preferably ask me, and I am an open book, so go for it.
Well, like I asked you guys, how are you guys involved in workers' compensation? In that we're on Work Comp Matters. What do you guys do on a daily basis that's in the work comp industry?
Fantastic. Okay. I've been in workers' compensation ever since 1991. I started off on the defense, working for the SIU unit of an insurance company, mostly dealing with liens. I did that for a couple of years until the 1994 layoffs, where about 25% of the industry statewide got laid off. I then found a job working for a defense hearing rep company, defending liens. I did that. Then I went to work as a claims adjuster doing catastrophic claims. I actually had more desk authority than my claims manager had. Then I got laid off and couldn't find a job. And I sent out about 18 resumes, couldn't get one interview. This was about 11 years ago. So by virtue of attrition, I had to start my own business. I started up Appel & Associates with 2 clients representing lien claimants. I then, 6 months after that, got a gig working for an applicant attorney's office, and I worked out an arrangement where, as long as there was no conflict of interest, talking about Chinese wall, I was able to run my lien business and represent the applicant attorney as a hearing representative in court. That lasted for about 6 years, and then I got an offer from a 30-plus year applicant attorney who wanted to semi-retire, and he asked me if I would manage his business. So for the past 4.5 years, I've been managing a workers' compensation applicant attorney law firm, and in the process of doing that, I also started something which I don't believe anybody else is doing. In addition to literally managing his firm, I also administer for 3 other applicant attorney law firms. So essentially, I handle applicant attorney cases. Sorry about that. For about 4 different applicant attorney firms, I have sort of pushed off my lien business. Ted runs the majority of my lien business. Without asking, as I call him, Mike, my right-hand man. He is literally my right-hand man at Turchin Law, the applicant attorney business. It's because of Mike that I can literally come and go as I please. I do breathe, eat, and sleep workers' compensation. I'm always handing out cards. I have learned that the best way of advertising the business is to hand out cards and talk to people about workers' compensation. I'm always the one that's at the bar buying someone a drink who has some type of employment or workers' compensation issue that I can, let me buy you a drink and we'll talk about it. I love that I don't charge people a single dollar out of pocket because I'm working for a no recovery, no fee. I learned early on in life that I do not like asking people for money. I've never been good at it. Yeah, I do this, but you got to give me money. I like representing the small guy. I also like representing people on a no recovery, no fee. I like being able to say, I'll talk to you on the phone. Come into my office. Let's have a conference. There's no charge. There's no obligation. And if you need my services, it doesn't cost you a single dollar out of pocket because in some way, shape, or form, I'll find a way to get it on the back end. We don't advertise on radio, TV, billboards. It's mostly all word of mouth. I firmly believe that if you treat someone right, no matter how small, they will tell one person. And if you piss somebody off, they're going to tell about 7. And as long as I have no direct knowledge that a workers' compensation issue is fraud, I will represent that person to the best of my ability because you never know when that small person will refer you a much bigger file. You never know when you will pick up the phone and get that $1 million case. I don't mean $1 million in my pocket, but a case that's worth $1 million that I can take the percentage off of. And I literally, in my career in the past 5 years, have picked up the phone and gotten that $1 million case. There's a very long-winded answer for one of your questions. I hope I can provide as long an answer for the next one.
Well, I'm also curious of how they, if they want to.
Well, okay. Well, tell you what. Let's see. We told you about Mike. Robert is my protege. Now, Robert is an interesting character because I told the story where he was a little puppy dog on all fours coming into my office asking for a little bit of milk and a bowl of kibble. The little bit of milk and bowl and kibble is not true. However, it's artistic license. Robert had just finished law school. Robert had passed the bar. I was running an ad for a legal assistant. Robert comes into my office to apply for the job as a legal assistant. I hired him on the spot. But the great part about the story is I hired him on a Friday. He may or may not remember this. And he comes in on Monday and he goes, okay, what's up? I said, you're going to court. Here are your files. Go. And he looks at me and says, where do I punch in? I go, you don't punch a clock. Just get your ass to court. And of course, he likes to say even now that I taught him everything that he knows, and I really appreciate that. And he still to this day calls me boss, but it's not true. I taught him everything he knows for the first 6 months, and then he took everything that I taught him for the past 6 years and he has applied it and learned on his own. But I taught him old school. He worked on my lien cases for Appellant Associates before, and I just didn't say, well, here's the Valdez case, okay, and if they object like one day late, you can get your UNC. I taught him Supreme Court cases. I taught him, well, actually, I gave him Supreme Court cases. I taught him penalties and interest. I taught him attorney fees. I taught him unreasonable delay. I gave him the cases that were applicable, and it's because of his intelligence and his smarts that he picked it up and learned with it. I occasionally ask myself, or you might ask yourself, how can two people go to the same law school, graduate the same bar? One now is running a $10 million business, and the other is struggling to make $50,000 a year. They learn the same thing, but it's how they apply what they've learned. And Robert is absolutely wonderful when it comes to like updated marketing and such. And in fact, we're going to see if we can bring one of these guys to the table right now. And logistically, that's not possible, so we're just going to leave him over there in the news area. Kristen, did you want to ask Robert or Mike a question?
I got the question.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know the question, right? So first, boss, I appreciate how the story evolves about how you and I met every time you tell it.
It changes, and it evolves just a little bit.
It's getting better
each
every time.
All right.
It was cold. It was the winter. It
I
was
wish we could have
snowing
taken
out.
the facial expressions during that.
I know.
that
My facial
story.
expressions tell it all.
Yeah.
When he's telling it every time and there's a new wrinkle, I'm just like, oh, that's new.
Yeah.
You know?
All right.
A little
Noted for the record
yeah,
when you
revisionist
tell it.
history. But it's
Yeah.
fine. Yes, I appreciated working with Steve. I know. I don't know how many other applicants you guys had for that job position, but I definitely got it at the time. So
None that
good.
I wanted to hire.
Well, I appreciate that nonetheless. And yes, you mentioned that you think drinking next to someone at the bar is probably the best advertising, like a personal connection. Generally, I think is right, but perhaps there's a larger volume that you can do.
Something on four wheels.
Well, either way, like a billboard or something, because if you have to have a drink with everybody you market to, you're not gonna make it too long. So hopefully your business evolves past boozing with the potential client.
And if you listen to the show, Robert's not shy about saying that essentially he doesn't drink that much, and of course I'm not shy about saying that I drink like a fish, and there's one of the reasons why. But please continue.
So on average, we drink normally between two people. You can say.
All right.
Okay. So. Yeah, I focus more on the internet marketing and newer methods like that, which I think are a little bit more productive.
Robert is or was a big Facebook target advertising guy, right?
Yeah, lots of methods of advertising. You got to diversify, right? You don't have just one stream. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. But sometimes when things are good, right, there's multiple that are going well, multiple lines of advertising. Other months may not be as good, right? Everything has an ebb and flow to it. You have to be patient. A little perspective after the year's end, you can see that. Not freak out too much when, your expenses are high and your signups are low, but not get too high on yourself if you have a really good month, which I've been lucky to have once or twice. So I appreciate learning a lot. WorkComp Central. I do read the articles. I know I said off the air that I just look at the pictures. So I was just joking, right? Just that sometimes the pictures of me.
Oh.
So that's why,
Yeah.
It was twice of me I saw once,
Nice.
or twice this year actually. So that was nice, and I appreciate you guys putting my photo up there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And what can I say? This podcast, maybe I always think we should focus more on the workers' comp California, and then Steve sometimes thinks that we should focus more national news. You guys have you got a big picture ahead of you.
Well, there's an easy way to change that, my boy. Write some friggin' news.
It's true. It's easy to complain when you don't produce.
So you just come and just comment.
I could, I'm the color commentary, and he's the play-by-play.
Okay.
Right? Is that how it would work?
Well, essentially, I eat, breathe, and sleep work comp matters, and then just Robert comes in and steps behind a microphone and goes for it.
Well, I am the solo attorney of a
He
firm,
is the
so
solo attorney, yes.
Forgive me. It's not like I'm just like sleeping outside and then just waking up and coming here.
Well, I was gonna ask, so you practice and you have...
Yeah, I'm in court every day.
Okay.
All day, every day.
He is an applicant attorney. He's got his own practice right up the street, and he's pretty much in Van Nuys. He files all his cases in Van Nuys. He's there basically every day.
And I've had the privilege to learn what it takes to build an applicant attorney firm, from passing the bar to getting your first job, to doing contract depositions for other attorneys, to signing up your clients, to the sales pitch that you have to give a client and explaining what their rights are. Right? It's all about the potential leads and your retention rate. You got what's your batting average, right? And then you have to do a good job with the actual law. You have to make sure that you work the case. You have to get them to the doctor. You got to file the app. These are things that are nuanced, because, for example, if you file a paper app and you don't use capital letters everywhere, it'll get rejected, right? A lot of people know that. There's a lot of attorneys, I sub into their cases when they may do the first couple steps, but they don't really know what they're doing. And when the rubber kind of meets the road, they call somebody who's there every day, right? For example, recently we've been seeing a lot of priority conferences on denied CT claims without a QME. Right? It's the same show over and over, but I can understand that if you don't go to court every day, right, that could be a difficult argument to come up against. So we cover that here. I know this is your first time probably listening to the whole show because you're part of it. Not many people listen to the whole hour.
I don't ask anybody to listen to the whole show. I ask them to listen for 5 or 10 minutes, and then if they don't like it, turn it off and listen to something else. One thing also that I've said before on the show, Robert has never worked for a defense firm. When Robert first started with me, I introduced him around. I introduced him to the judges and the defense attorneys and the applicant attorneys. When he passed the bar, he was offered multiple times 6-figure salaries from the defense, turned them all down because he knew he wanted to work for an applicant attorney and eventually hang his own shingle. So, and he literally started with, I don't know, 2 cases or something like that.
Of course, you always start with 1, but yes, from being a lien claimant rep to graduating law school, waiting for your results of your bar while also working, then doing depositions and learning a little bit about the law and going from there. It's been a fun ride. I've been very lucky. The information that Steve, I still call him boss, the information Steve's given me originally obviously still holds true. Your rights haven't changed since then.
I'm big on cliches.
Yeah,
cliches stand the test of time.
The labor code's been pretty consistent since then. We've had a few wrinkles, right? A few Senate bills and Assembly bills, but generally your rights when you get hurt at work and the standard of proof and things of that nature have not changed. So ever since your introduction to the area of law, of workers' comp to me, I've taken off. And it's interesting because in law school, they don't really cover workers' comp. Not in the the top tier hoity-toity
Not even
law schools
one
that I
class. That's right.
No, I went to University of San Diego School of Law, top tier school, And as far as I can tell, I think I'm the only person out of my class. All the great students. I wasn't the best student. I didn't go to all the classes. Forgive
Maybe that's
me.
the one you missed, the one with workers' compensation.
I did miss the career fair or whatever it was when you're supposed to get a job with the defense. I missed that, so I had to get a job somewhere.
But you did take a class offered by the city of Los Angeles or the state of California on how to prepare for and do a jury trial, and specifically you learned how to stand and how to face them and stuff like that?
So TAP, yes, the Trial
TAP,
Advocacy
okay.
Project or program, correct. Okay, so law school teaches you nothing. I don't know how else to say that. It teaches you how to pass law school. Passing the bar is a different aspect of being a lawyer, and then of course there's practicing law. Which is different than owning your own business of law. Right? These are all separate things. Taking the LSAT before that is different than going to law school, which is different than passing your high school final. Everything is different. So I'm much better pro than I am student. I guess there's a lot of like NFL players like that, where they come from a small school, and it doesn't matter if the guy against them went to a big school. When the impact happens, somebody's getting run over. Right? And that's just how it is. And as far as I'm concerned, the best lawyer in California, possibly the best trial lawyer in the world, is Gary Dordick. And he went to West LA Valley College of Law, I think, something like that. And he's speaker at all the conventions for the trial lawyers. So, he's like on the Mount Rushmore of trial lawyers. So where you go to school doesn't really matter. But you do have to learn each individual aspect of what it takes to be a lawyer, to run a business. for workers' comp, which they did not cover in law school, it seems interesting because this is an area of law in California where it's what, like $10 billion a year?
Actually, it's more than $15 billion. And although those hotshot civil and criminal attorneys look down on workers' comp like kangaroo court, more money runs through workers' compensation over 15. It might even be close to $16 billion than any other field of law.
Correct. But going back to how law school doesn't really teach you how to be a lawyer, I still wanted to know what it was like to be a lawyer. I think we've all seen Law and Order, right? Everybody wants that moment. And I got pretty close, so I figured, let's go for it, right? And I've had that moment multiple times, like in the jury and stuff like that. So the Trial Advocacy Project, you can donate your time to the city attorney's office, and they will train you how to be a trial lawyer, the Trial Advocacy Project. You have to pay for these classes originally. It's with the LA County Bar. And any lawyer listening to this now, I'd probably suggest you check it out. First, there's ITAP, Introductory TAP, and then there's TTAP, Traditional TAP, Trial Advocacy Project. And the instructors are the city attorneys themselves. So they give you mock cases. They'll give you the evidence, and they'll teach you how to stand, how to talk, right? May we approach, not may I approach when you're talking to a judge, right? Because they're going to say, no, you can't unilaterally approach me. That'd be ex parte, right? So it's the little things. They actually give you a script, and they have you practice it. And any lawyer listening to this, I strongly suggest you go through it because
60 seconds, my boy, 60 seconds.
Every lawyer deserves a chance to do that trial, to do that jury trial. And I wasn't going to miss my chance. I've done the big jury cases and things like that, and it's an honor, right? And it's fun outside of the preparation for it.
But you found your home in work comp, right?
But workers' comp, it's more like poker, hand by hand, than civil, which is chess, a longer game.
I also think you like the fact, like I do, you see the same people day in and day out, and you get challenged and learn something new every day.
Yeah, but at the same time, you do see the same people and the same arguments, the same, it's repetitive. So as soon as you've, defended one argument, it's going to work either way, no matter where you go, different cases. And it's really fun because a lot of times my staff, for example, will listen to me on a phone call where one call is all it takes to get more money. I'm sure you know this. But you have to respond to the defense attorney. My assistant says, they want to dance. That's what he calls it, the dance. And we laugh and we chuckle about it because we know it's true. They want to say something to me about how my client's not credible or how it's some sort of defense, it's post-termination, but it's a CT claim, for example. They want me to answer their question, to let them know that I know what I'm talking about. Right? Oh, well, Labor Code 5412, that's not going to be an exception to post-termination, 3600-810. You say the same things over and over. But you check the box, and the defense attorney, okay, well, maybe I do have a little bit more money for you. You call your client, you settle the case. It's fun, right? It's LA law, LA living. And I appreciate Boss letting me, or introducing me to it.
It is my pleasure. And again, WorkCom Matters wouldn't be the same without Robert Ozeron. We've got about 5 minutes left. Scott has to get out. We've got the Chief of Staff, Dr. Michael Zima. Now, firstly, of course, he's not a medical doctor. We call him a doctor. He's a Juris Doctorate. He graduated from law school. I've known him for over 20-some-odd years. We work for the same defense firm. He then retired after about 30 years or so. And then when I opened up the recent shop, I said, are you ready to come out of retirement? And he basically, although he doesn't remember and he denies it, it's absolutely true. He came back with the idea of volunteering his time for the first couple of weeks to see how it would work. And I know we didn't talk about raises or anything like that, but he started out in like a pittance. He started out with slave wages. He didn't have to ask for raises. I gave him raises because I knew he was worth more. Although he hasn't gotten a raise in about 2 years, I'm paying him all I can afford. But Mike, what's it like working with grouchy old May or whatever?
Well,
say what you want.
Yeah. Come May 7th of next year, I will have completed my 40th year in workers' comp.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. The first 36 or so was with the defense. And then I got out because I essentially couldn't stand it anymore. And Steve, who's an old friend, knew that I was sitting around And he gave me a call, and the way I describe it, the call lasted about 120 seconds. I can still see myself sitting on the couch. I think I was watching Judge Judy. And he calls me up and he says, "Hey, you tired of sitting around?" Yeah. He says, "You want to come work with me?" I say, "Yeah." He says, "Okay, well, meet me on Friday." Okay. It might have even been 60 seconds.
Huh.
And so, we've been building up this plaintiff's practice. I'm still learning the plaintiff side, and every day is an education. And my office is right next to his, and I love listening to Steve deal with these defense folks.
Mike and I fill gaps. Mike does things that I don't want to do. I do things that he doesn't want to do. Basically, Mike is a cave dweller. His nirvana would be to sit in four walls with no windows, no telephone, and just review subpoenaed records and medical reports, which I would go batty ass crazy. Okay, I would hang a noose and hang myself.
At this point in my career, I love to go into my office, shut the door, and essentially make love to documents.
There you go.
That's what happens after 40 years.
And I could be on the phone all day talking to adjusters and defense attorneys and clients. And I mean, Mike has heard me like getting totally frustrated, like Robert was talking about, doing issues, and I go, "I can't believe this person is such an idiot," yelling at the top of my lungs, and then I'll answer, "This is Steve. Can I help you?" And I just start the thing all over. So yeah. Mike and I fill gaps, and it's been a very symbiotic relationship. And by the way, don't think just because we fill gaps that we don't argue. We were arguing today about the computer, which is my fault, and his inability to do to finish off the news. Basically, I pick the stories, I do the rough draft, and then Mike is my editor. He runs it all out, and so that is great. Now, the show wouldn't be as good without him either. So that's why he's called, the chief of staff, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.
Kristen, we're about at the end. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we take leave of each other?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Pleasure's mine. Want to go have a drink?
Sure.
That'd be great. That'd be fantastic.
Sure.
Okay. From my right-hand man, Chief of Staff, Dr. Mike Zyma. From my protege, Attorney Robert Ozeron. Scott Walton of Uncle Studio is on the board taking care of the technical difficulties. Jared, the IT guy. We definitely couldn't do the video without him, and we're still working that thing out. Back in Munich, Germany, is a 45-year retired attorney, John Scalia. And, of course, we couldn't do the show without the continued support and help of all the good people back at WorkComp Central, including, but not limited to, Leaf File and the CEO and President, Ms. Kristen Chavez. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again next week for another edition of WorkComp Matters.